What's up, everybody? Week one of the SEC football season. Our buddy Chris Marler stopping by. We'll preview some of the games with him, and we'll make our official predictions for the SEC football season and our playoff picks. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers checking us out every day. Find us wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, let's dive right into it. Our buddy Chris Marler, he's back with us throughout this entire season. You know him from the College Football Uncensored podcast. And Marler, we've gotten through the desert that was the summer with no college football. We had week 0. Now we get to the main course. SEC week 1 is upon us. How are you?
Gordy, I'm back in Atlanta for the time being, if you couldn't tell from all the fire engines and sirens going on in the background. So it's good to be back. Hello to all the everydayers. I love that. I don't know if it's an adjective or an adverb, but yeah, I'm excited, man. It's like I'm in the middle of a nightmare travel day, which is like kind of my thing nowadays. But that means that tomorrow I'll get to rest and recuperate, and then we'll start prepping a little bit for our podcast. We'll have this podcast be out, and then Thursday it's game day. So we have we've gotten through, as you said yesterday, we've gotten through the desert. The drought is over, and now the rain begins. It's gonna be great.
Let's start here, Marler. We do have 2 games on Thursday night. Florida, Utah. It's a pretty big one. I mean, it was a big one week 1 a year ago, but a lot of new. Obviously, Anthony Richardson is off in the NFL. We get Graham Mertz, the former Wisconsin quarterback, leading Florida. I'm bullish on the Gators, though. I like what they've done. The Austin Armstrong hiring, I think, is going to turn out to be one of the offseason hires of the year. Him running that defense, because what was Florida's problem last year? It was the defense. They couldn't get stops and that sort of thing. We know Billy Napier always typically has a pretty good offense, and that run game. I love Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne in the backfield, but a quick thought on Florida and Utah getting things kicked off on Thursday night.
I feel like Florida's in the same boat in just one way that Alabama's in, and just hear me out when I say this, and that's that into the offseason, like for most of the offseason, we've heard the same narrative, we've heard the same story, we've heard the same, assumptions that are being made. And now we're talking about, I don't know, last week going into the offseason, or going into the season, last week of the offseason, they kind of feel like they're in a little bit of the same arena that Bama's in terms of people are trying to buy into them a little bit. And I don't know where that's exactly coming from. I haven't heard a bunch of crazy stuff coming out of Florida that's been super positive that they're going to turn this thing around from 5-6 wins to 9 or 8, 9, 10 wins. But I will say, like you said, love the run game. Don't know if Cam Rising is going to be good or going to be back to play. And then you talk about also the fact that Vegas always knows, and the number has come trickling down right before the start on Thursday night. So I think it was in double digits down to 8. I think I saw it this morning. Some places have it at 7.5. Now, of course, it doesn't mean they're favored by any means, but I'm excited for that game. I think listen, we had the same exact thinking going into last year's game against Utah with Florida, that they were not going to beat them. This is the Pac-12 champs the year before. They went to the Rose Bowl in that epic game against Ohio State, and they go down to the swamp and they get beat by Florida. Now, who's to say that couldn't happen again? I know Anthony Richardson is gone, but who's to say that couldn't happen again?
Do you have a quick thought? I mean, I know the betting line is Utah -6.5. It feels like, I don't know if Florida's going to pull off the upset, but it just feels like if I get Florida, +7, I'm going to jump on that.
I didn't know it was down to 6.5. I mean, I will tell you right now, I'm going to watch this game every second of it. I'm not touching this game with a 10-foot pole on betting because honestly, this is the first time Florida has left the state in the first 2 weeks of the season in 32 years.
Wow.
Right? I mean, there are inmates that have been able to leave the state faster than that, and down there in Florida. So it's I don't think I would touch it. And again, there's so much uncertainty with Utah. But here's the thing too. That seems about right because as much as we talk about the Pac-12 and the high-flying offenses and all that kind of stuff, there's not a team in that conference that's built more like an SEC team from a physicality standpoint and just in the trenches and built from the inside out than Utah.
Yeah. I do want to go quick here because I want to touch on a good bit of the teams. The other game Thursday night, Mizzou opens with South Dakota. I thought it was smart on their part. This was supposed to originally be a Saturday game. They had requested and asked to move it up to Thursday so that they could kind of get, a little bit like it's the game on SEC Network. If they're playing this game on a Saturday, it's ESPN Plus and nobody's watching it. It is an interesting one to Missouri to get started off on the right foot. Eli Drinkwitz gets that extension. Yeah. But why is he being so quiet on the quarterback? Like he won't come out and say Brady Cook's the starter. I think they said that we may see Sam Horn, we may see Jake Garcia playing this one because look, they should be up by 1 million on South Dakota. But like, it's weird that he hasn't stood by Brady Cook.
Why? Brady Cook sucks. He's not very good. I hate to say it, but he's just not very good. And here's the other thing too. Let me start by saying this. I say it every single year that we ever bring up any Dakota team. We don't need 2 Dakotas, and that's all I'm going to say about that. We can get away with one. I don't get it. But talking about this game in particular, like with the quarterback situation, like you mentioned, I'm talking to some people that like I'm close with that are big Mizzou people. I wouldn't say close to the situation, but are up to date with a lot of like the current roster fits and things like that going on in Como. Like Sam Horn is the most talented quarterback on that roster. I mean, he's a former 4-star from Collins Hill, is the quarterback for Travis Hunter, the all-world transfer out there at Colorado. That kid, I mean, he was 98 off the mound this spring. I mean, the kid's got a cannon. From an arm standpoint, from like a physical tool standpoint, he's the most talented one. But here's the thing: do you put the ball in his hands and probably drop a game you shouldn't this year because he's unproven, untested, all that kind of stuff, and a freshman, or do you? Just for the big picture of things, or do you kind of play it safe in a year where Drinkwitz probably needs to win and give the ball to Brady Cook, limiting what that offense could probably be?
Yeah, it's again, it'll be fascinating to see if they already have a quarterback battle in week 1. But I think the cream will rise to the top. I think Brady Cook will be the guy, and we'll see how it plays out. Let's get into a couple of the games on Saturday, 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern, ABC in Nashville, Nissan Stadium. It's Tennessee, preseason number 12, taking on Virginia. As a buddy of mine who is a Virginia alum, he said they are going to suck this year. They're picked to finish dead last in the ACC. So while it is a Power 5 opponent, it's one that Tennessee opens up as a 4-touchdown favorite against. But this is a big one for Josh Heupel and company to prove, hey, look, this is I don't want to say a system because that sounds like I'm talking about Cliff Kingsbury, Texas Tech. But like, this is a system. We're going to lose Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton will slide right in and we'll pick up right where we left off.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. I'm just not. I think that they are going to take a lot of shots at Virginia. I think this is a game that like suits Tennessee for a number of reasons and favors Tennessee for a number of reasons, not just because of the fact that Virginia is going to be terrible this year. And I hate to say it because it's like who's pulling against Virginia in the country. You know what I mean? Like nobody's like avidly hates the Cavaliers in football, right? I know Auburn fans hate them in basketball, but like, nobody's pulling against Virginia, I think, consistently. It's going to be a tough ride for them on Saturday. Like and I think that when you talk about setting up for success in a like first game of the season scenario, yeah, this guy right here you're showing on the screen, Josh Heupel and Joe Milton, there's nobody that wants their offense to not miss a beat more than this guy right here, Josh Heupel, right? There's no one that's received more praise without like having to have proven it in the offseason than Joe Milton. I mean, the kid can throw it 1,000 yards. He's Uncle Rico. He can throw it over the mountains, whatever you want to say. They also, that entire offense is predicated off of having accuracy with the deep ball. That's something we haven't seen him do consistently, and it's a small sample size, but still, it's a quarterback that's been beaten out for 2 jobs. And Hendon Hooker statistically is probably the best quarterback Tennessee's ever had from a statistical standpoint. So I don't think at the end of the season, we're going to look at his numbers and think like, oh my God, he put up Joe Burrow type numbers, which some people have like projected, right? But at the same time, I think that in this game, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he puts up 450 yards with 6 or 7 touchdowns just because that's what they need to keep the hype rolling.
As my buddy Matt Moscona would say, find somebody else. Don't make Burrow as a comparison. Like pick anyone else. Burrow is so ridiculous, like record setting. Like no one will break that one. Let's dive into a couple other quick hitters of the early games. Quick thought on Ball State at Kentucky. Kentucky's about a 26.5 point favorite. But like this was a game last year that Will Levis would throw a couple of red zone picks and Kentucky would win by 14. You're like, why was it that close? With Liam Cohen back, Devin Leary in, I feel like Kentucky is out on a mission this year. We're going to see that offense high flying often and early.
And again, I think this is a similar situation where it's like, all right, we need to get the ball rolling on like momentum and hype and confidence going into the season. And that's not just for the fans, it's not just for like the coaching staff, that's like, and not just for the players, it's for all of it, right? Like get this thing rolling early. And I think Kentucky is another team that's going to want to do that because you saw how bad that offense was at times last year, man. It was like no matter what Will Levis did in terms of like the turnovers and all that kind of stuff, they were bad all the way around. The offensive line was one of the worst, if not the worst in the SEC. They just didn't push anybody around. They didn't execute deep. They returned all of their top 5 pass catchers this year, and they have an upgraded quarterback. So I expect them to come out like, firing, especially with Cohen back and kind of making this like a statement game. So poor Ball State, man, they're in for a long Saturday.
One more for you. This one moved from 3:00 in the afternoon to noon. It is Arkansas playing host to Western Carolina. I was on with our buddy John Neighbors the other day, host of Locked On Razorbacks. I didn't realize they're playing this game in Little Rock. This is at War Memorial Stadium. They're still doing that weird thing where they go play games sometimes in Little Rock, other ones at Fayetteville. But anyway, it's an early game. Sam Pittman says, bleep your tailgate. I don't care. We're moving this up because of the heat. Noon game, Arkansas, just a big one to get started with. Rocket Sanders, KJ Jefferson, all the pieces they bring back, right? Yeah,
it'll be interesting. This is the first time Pittman's had to replace not just one coordinator, but both coordinators. That was a lot of continuity on that team a year ago, in the 3 years he's been there before that. So what does that look like? I think that's a big concern. Here's the thing. You mentioned Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson. I think that those are the two headliners that everyone's going to want to see. Those are two of probably the top 25, 30 players in the country, no matter how you look at it, right? But what I want to see is the defense, because that defense that defense was atrocious last year, dead last in the entire country in pass defense. There's nowhere to go but up, but you need to go up because this is probably the easiest game on that schedule. And as somebody who had a baseball scholarship pulled from the Catamounts, I hope they beat them by 1,000. So there you go.
All right, more with Chris Marler. We'll run through the rest of the SEC slate in just a sec. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode is brought to you by our friends over at the Gametime app. Look, buying tickets to your favorite events doesn't need to be stressful. Gametime is the fastest and easy way for you to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They got killer deals on last-minute tickets, and their best price guarantee they have. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. They got flash deals and last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. The best part that I like is they've got images of the seat views. You can see what your view is going to look like in the stadium before you buy them. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Go download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, continue on with our buddy Chris Marler. As Marler, we get into the rest of the games on Saturday. By the way, are you going to any games this weekend, or are you just watching at the house?
I'm watching at the house, man. Like week 1, I had a chance to go to North Carolina, South Carolina, and it wasn't even gonna be via work. It was gonna be like with like some of our listeners and go in like in a box, which would have been awesome. But I'm just excited to see all the games for the entire day. So I'm gonna have probably 2 or 3 TVs set up and just as much food as I can put into my fat mouth, and I can't wait.
There's a lot of cupcakes happening, so let's try to run through a couple of the other quick cupcakes. Mercer, they actually played a game last week. They're 1-0. Mm-hmm. They're going to Ole Miss. Big for Ole Miss. I think we're going to see probably both quarterbacks. I think Jackson Dart will start. I think we do see Spencer Sanders in this one. It's still an open quarterback battle in my mind, at least in Oxford. But what's your thought with Ole Miss?
I mean, yeah, I want to see that. I don't think it's that as open as we think. I think it's Jackson Dart and his to lose. Quinshon Judkins, I mean, like, listen, he'll get off on the right foot against Mercer, right? This is not, it's a FCS team. They're ranked, but it's an FCS team. And I think that you want to get him going early, like you were able to do a year ago. But can he repeat the success he had for a full 12, 13, potentially 14 games this year? That is something I'm eager to see. But the big thing for me is, how do the pass catchers look? Like, is Trigg going to be involved? Is he going to be willingly invested into what they're doing, unlike a year ago? So I think that's stuff that looks really interesting for me. But I think it'll be good to see. You probably will see all three quarterbacks.
Yeah, certainly possible. And like you said, wide receiver is one of those spots. I mean, they're loaded. Trey Harris, Franklin, Dayton Wade, Jalen Knox, Braylon Brown, all those different recruits. But who rises to the occasion? Who's going to be that go-to guy? That'll be interesting to watch at Ole Miss. How about Auburn? They opened with UMass, another team that's 1-0, started last week. About a 35-point favorite Auburn is. That's a lot of respect for Hugh Freeze in his game one. We know they bring in Peyton Thorne from Michigan State. We know they've built a lot of pieces through the transfer portal, but we saw last year, Marler, LSU, Brian Kelly did the same thing. It took them a good 3 quarters against Florida State to gel and find that chemistry. My question is, does Auburn take a little time to gel in this one? I know it's UMass.
UMass is awful. They're awful. Like, ever since Marcus Camby left, this team has not been the same. So, I mean, like,
they beat New Mexico State by 11 last week.
Okay. So New Mexico State is worse, but UMass is still like bottom 5 in the country. Auburn should be. This picture of Hugh, man. It's just like, every time I see Hugh at the podium, it just, all I can think of is him saying, "Father God," and then just getting into whatever he's about to say.
Or at least, and all of God's people said, "Amen."
Right. Amen. So I think that it'll be interesting to see what they look like. I'm sure. I'm mainly interested to see what the receivers look like, how the offensive line, the offensive line is not going to be tested early, but they have to be better than they were a year ago, especially trying to run the football. I think Jarquez Hunter is probably the most slept on back in the SEC. He's really, really talented. But the other thing is, too, is like the pass catchers. And then what is the package for Robbie Ashford? Because you've gone out of your way to say that there's a package for Robbie Ashford. What is it? Like, I think we're not going to show too much because it's early. But, I think they're going to have something for him, and I wonder if they show it any of it this weekend.
Yeah, Robbie Ashford dealing with a little bit of an injury, we heard the other day, so he may not even play in this one. We'll see. Yeah. Mississippi State, they get the Zach Arnett era started with Southeastern Louisiana. Again, a lot of these games don't even have lines on them, but man, I'm just fascinated to see what they're going to look like. Will Rogers, Jaquavius Marks, all these great pieces back, but what do they look like without Mike Leach in the air raid?
Yeah, and what does Will Rogers look like in a different offense? This team, it's like, there's so many question marks, and they're the only team in the country having to go through what they're going through. That is a big concern, I think, for me, just in terms, they've been predicted last in like the division, I think, which I think is probably fair. I know they won 9 games a year ago, but still, I don't know. Like, this team, I'm so hesitant to make any bold claims at all on this team, but it should be fun. They're going to obviously do a tribute to Mike Leach, which should be great. Yeah, I mean, the only question I have is what does the offense look like, and how different does it look like from seasons past?
The other thing, sneaky good on defense too. They bring back Nathan Pickering, Jaden Crumedy, the two of the best linebackers in the conference, and Jet Johnson and Nathaniel Watson. Like, they got dudes, and yet I'm supposed to pick them to go 6-6. Like, they're going to beat somebody they're not supposed to beat this year. So, going to be fun to watch them. All right, how about Georgia? The reigning champs, number 1. They're banged up. I don't know if you saw Kirby's report the other day. Literally half their roster is dealing with some kind of injury this week. Granted, they get Tennessee Martin. Good thing they got rid of that Oklahoma game, because I'd really be worried about the defending champs. But Tennessee Martin coming in, man, they could throw whoever out there, and they're going to win.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the only question here is, what does the quarterback look like? I mean, it's the only question. I think it's 2 things for me. It is, what does the quarterback situation look like? How good are they going to be? Not just on the pictures you find of these coaches is incredible. I think that there's a reason why they wanted Bobo gone a decade ago. Right. And I don't think that's going to rear its ugly head again to like this weekend necessarily. But Carson Beck, like, we put a lot on this kid's shoulders. And I know you have him as a guy you think he potentially win the Heisman. I don't even think that's a bad pick. He's got weapons everywhere. But here's the thing, and this is something that Georgia has done better when they had Todd Monken than any other program in the country, and that is spreading the football around to multiple people. Bowers has led the team in catches both seasons, but when you talk about being able to have at least one catch for all these multiple players, I remember in 2021, they had in their last 7 or 8 games, they had a minimum 8 different people catch at least one pass in every game to close out the season. And you saw how, if you build an offense based off of 2 people like Alabama did in that season, it comes back to bite you. So I wonder what that looks like. How do they distribute the football with all of the talent they have with those pass catchers, not just a receiver, but tight end as well, and behind Brock Bowers? What does that look like? Does Brock Bowers play running back? That's the other thing too. Like I said, is that something we're actually going to see?
Yeah, the Dejon Edwards has been banged up. Kendall Milton's been dealing with a hamstring. It's been one thing after another there at Georgia. How about the Aggies? They come out this week. They announced Connor Wegman's officially their starter. They open with New Mexico, 38-point home favorites for a team that went 5-7 a year ago. But people are buying in the Aggies. Are you buying in?
I am. I think that Wegman is going to be really good. I think he was good in limited action a year ago at times. And here's the thing: his supporting cast is going to be very good. Jesus, these pictures are incredible. It just catches me off guard. You got to tell me when you're going to go to these pictures, because it looks like they're staring into my soul. But no, I think with Wegman especially, you have 2 of the best young receivers in general, not only in the SEC but potentially in the country, making one of the best duos in the country. I think for a 1-2 punch at receiver. Stewart's going to be a star. Maybe he already is. I don't know. He had coming off his freshman year. You get a nice Smith back for his 11th season, which is cool. And then what does the defense look like in year 2 after losing Mike Elko? You have a NFL level talent at like across the defensive line. They are going to be so disruptive across the defensive line. Nobody cares about that, especially in this game. What does Wegman look like? What does the offense look like with Petrino? I'll tell you one thing I'm going to look for first, and I'm not making a joke when I say this. Does Jimbo even come out of that tunnel with his Cheesecake Factory length play call sheet? or does he come out and say, is he just carrying around the
nothing in his hands? Yeah.
Right. That honestly would be, I think, a pretty good look for Jimbo from a PR standpoint.
That'd be huge. Can you imagine Jimbo's just walking up down the sideline clapping? I think that'd be really interesting to see. We'll skip Vandy A&M. Vandy's playing Alabama A&M. Look, they beat Hawaii. No need to even talk about that one. Alabama against Middle Tennessee. No depth chart, Saban, for the first time in 17 years. What's going on? Who's the quarterback?
Jalen Milroe is going to walk out there first. I've said this all offseason. I would be shocked if he's not the one that comes out there first. Anytime this kind of happens where you're trying to figure out who the quarterback is, I feel like the person that's been there longest usually takes the first rep for Alabama quarterback. Saw it with Blake Sims in 2014. Saw it with Blake Barnett in 2016. Let's not forget Cooper Bateman got a start one time in 2015. This whole thing, I just feel like is listen, Jalen Milroe is going to do something incredible on Saturday. At some point, he is going to do something athletically that is going to have everyone's jaw dropped. He also might do something stupid. He might throw in triple coverage. I don't know. But the chances of him doing something that are going to wow everyone are way higher this weekend than to disappoint everyone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that it'll be really interesting to see who all gets to start. I don't think it's crazy to think if Tyler Buckner steps on the field, I'd be shocked.
Yeah,
I think Dylan Lonergan is more in this competition than people think, and he would be the third quarterback to go in. But yeah, I mean, let's see what it looks like. Because listen, week 2 is right around the corner, and you gotta play Texas. I'll tell you one thing I want to see as a person that has a vested interest in Alabama. I don't want to see a point scored. I don't know how unrealistic that is. I don't want to see a point scored.
All right, we got 2 more games to get into this weekend, 2 of the biggest. We'll touch on that with Chris Marler in just a sec. Continue on here, Locked On SEC. I want to remind you guys, college football season is here, and Locked On is kicking up your coverage with a Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday. Locked On is going to go live from 11 to 1 Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live. They're going to cover playoff implications, conference rivalries, all of that. Check it out, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel every Friday. You don't want to miss it. Marler, we got 2 more games left. Let's start with the Saturday night primetime game on ABC. It is number 1 North Carolina and Drake May against the Fighting Spencer Rattlers of South Carolina. Shane Beamer and company, 2.5-point underdogs from Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. I keep going back and forth on this one. I like South Carolina, but I saw Drake May in person at the Manning Passing Academy. That dude's legit.
Hey, Drake May is legit. He is. Now keep going down the roster.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I love Gene Chizik. He's one of the nicest people I have ever met and got to work with and all that stuff. Just the sweetest man in the world. Okay. And that is coming from somebody that grew up as a diehard Alabama fan. Gene Chizik is great. That defense wasn't great. That defense was really, really bad. I mean, really, really bad. Drake May is a lot of fun to watch. He doesn't return a top pass catcher. The offense is going to look different, and the defense has been awful. And there's no team that really has been that had more of an offensive awakening, it seemed like, at the end of last season than South Carolina. And I think they're very confident going into this year, and they still get to have the chip on their shoulder. Because it's listen, I doubt Shane Beamer all the time. It's like him and religion. I have so many questions about both, okay? And I'm always wrong. So when you go into this thing where Beamer he's gonna be able to tell this team, hey, you were an underdog against Tennessee. We ran out of fireworks, literally ran out of fireworks in the stadium against them. You were an underdog against Clemson. You ended their however many game winning streak at home, at the end last season. Almost beat Notre Dame. Now you get to go into a year against, I think, a team that they're better than. I think the roster is better than North Carolina's. I think the only reason this is getting as much pub is because Vegas knows that the majority of average and casual bettors know Drake May's name. They know he's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And that Jordan brand is very, very big nationwide. And that Carolina blue is pretty as hell. But dude, at some point you're gonna have to step up and play smash mouth football. And I don't think that they're going to be able to line up against South Carolina, which isn't saying much to have to do, because South Carolina was bad in the trenches last year. I think South Carolina wins this game by 10 points.
Yeah, I think it's a shootout. I don't know if I'm with you on South Carolina winning, but I think this one is last team with the ball wins. And kind of saw that South Carolina in the bowl game against Notre Dame. I'm curious, is Juice Wells healthy? That's been the big question mark. To say he's going to be ready to go. And then Nicholas Harbor, the big 5-star top recruit that they got in there. How do they use him? Tight end, wide receiver, get the ball in his hands and let him go to work.
Not listed as a starter. Kind of surprised about that.
And he's been banged up too, so there's a chance we don't even see him in this one. So we'll see. All right, it's a big one. The only game this week of matchup of 2 top 10 teams. It is number 5 LSU against number 8 Florida State down in Orlando. LSU's been about a 2.5 point favorite ever since this line came out. I just keep looking at it and wondering. And look, I'm high on LSU. I'm also high on Florida State. I keep wondering, is the wrong team favored in this one?
I mean, there's not a game that I have looked forward to more to watch and looked forward to less than predicting for week 1 all off season than this one, because my co-host is an FSU guy, and I love you, and you're an LSU guy, and I love Baton Rouge. I love LSU. It's I think there's a very real chance that all of my thoughts on LSU are wrong. I think there's they could be as good as advertised or better.
You're doubting them though, right?
I am. You have to show it to me in multiple seasons. You got to stack seasons, and that's just the bottom line. And I think what we saw last year was a combination of a lot of things. One, I love it for the fact that Brian Kelly's a really good coach. Here's what's kind of crazy, Gordy, is that Brian Kelly has just been putting up these type of seasons his entire career.
Yeah,
at multiple stops. He's got almost 300 wins, right? So he's at 270 something. And then you talk about, well, he goes to the SEC and he wins 10 in year 1, and now all of a sudden he's verified as a good coach. That is the most ridiculous crap. He's always been a good coach. He's got more talent to work with than ever before. That offense should be even better this year. Jaden Daniels was fantastic. Now I do wonder if Jaden Daniels can replicate a 28 touchdown, 3 interception year or season a year ago, and do that again this year, because that's very tough to do. But the talent is everywhere. They might be better at every single position this season than they were last. I don't know. but I do think that Florida State is as advertised and the hype is real down there. And they've got a lot of talent. And here's the thing people forget too. That game a year ago, you can come out and say you have a chip on your shoulder and you shouldn't have lost that game or whatever. But I mean, Florida State dominated that game for almost like 3/4 of it. I mean,
but do you buy into they had so many new pieces through the portal, you don't know what you have until you actually play in a game, and it was the week 1 game. Like by the fourth quarter, they looked like they had settled in. That just my thought.
I mean, I think that's kind of a cop-out because we want to see what we want to see. And I think that when you look at what happened in that game plan, he had all offseason to prepare.
Oh, real quick, the quick point, Florida State played a week 0 game last year too. So they were more gelled and ready, where LSU was still trying to figure things out. Not making excuses, just saying that's what we saw on the field.
Yeah, that all of that seems fair. I will say that 74% of their yards came in the last 3 drives. And regardless of all that, you're a fumble on the 1 yard line away from putting that game away with 1.5 minutes to go. Incredible resolve to show from LSU. Incredible job by them. I just think that like going down there, I wish this was a home and home. This should have been a home and home.
Yeah,
it would have been awesome to see. I could easily see LSU winning this. I could see LSU winning this game by 10 points. But I do think that Florida State is like whoever loses this game, I feel like we're gonna say just because of what social media does, oh, they weren't ready, the lights were too big. I think these are 2 legitimate college football playoff contenders. And I think that even with a loss, like they still have a chance to compete. But like these 2 teams are for real. And I think Florida State's gonna win, but I would not be surprised if I'm wrong. That's like probably the biggest cop-out, watered-down answer you could ever have.
Yeah,
I just walk myself in a circle.
I'm with you. I've been going back and forth. As earlier this week, I was leaning Florida State. I think right now I'm leaning a little bit more LSU after hearing Brian Kelly talk on Monday. Feels really confident in this bunch. With no Mason Smith hurts, but Mekhi Wingo is maybe just as good. I mean, a lot of lists have him as preseason first team all defense. So I'll be down there. We'll cover it. I'm leaning LSU right now. You're leaning Florida State. We'll see what happens on Saturday night. All right. Moment of truth, Marler. Let's get into our SEC picks. First up, we'll start with your selections for the SEC championship game. You've got Alabama coming out of the West. You got Georgia coming out of the East, and Alabama winning the SEC.
I hate it. When I see it, I hate it. But we're already too far gone. We're too far gone.
Yeah.
Last year I really prided myself on all my picks being like very accurate for most of the season, and our preseason picks on the podcast were really, really good. And I put in so much research and effort into that. And this year I feel like I'm just like, you know what? F it. Let's just lean being a homer and the game win. Because I feel like that's like the closer we get is that's the more resounding feeling I think I'm having. I'm gonna say they win the SEC. I would feel better about it if the entire broadcast of College Game Day did not agree with me. Yeah. But I do think this team has a chip on its shoulder. I think they're going to be much better at the end of the year than they are at the start of the year. And I think that, listen, like I said this last week on the pod, if we're just all of a sudden assuming that the greatest coach in college football history, who has the most talented roster in the country and just signed 9 5-stars, is going to fall off the face of the earth. And listen, if you're going to push back on that and say, we had the most talented roster in the country last year, he did. I love the hate that he's gotten for the coordinator hires because I love the fact that as much as I hate the podcast and the people on it, but Unnecessary Roughness came out with that thing yesterday. It's like, hey, here's all the coordinators from the 2015 team that Alabama had. It's like 6 future head coaches are on that, right? It's almost like he knows what he's doing. It's almost like he knows because the people that replaced him for that, the defensive coordinator replaced Kirby, he became a head coach. The offensive coordinator became the head coach of the Bills. Offensive coordinator after that, current head coach of Texas. It's almost like Saban knows what he's doing.
The Tommy Rees,
I'm not going to bet against him.
It feels like Tommy Rees will eventually be a head coach and that sort of thing. The Kevin Steele thing is weird. It feels like you're going back to the well. I don't know if that's. We'll see on that one. I don't know. Yeah. I think Pete Golding was much better than a lot of Bama fans give him credit for. But we'll see. Here are my picks. I think LSU wins the game in Tuscaloosa. I'm just going on with experience. I've gone back and forth on this, but I think it's a repeat of last year. I think LSU wins the West. I think Georgia wins the East. I think Georgia wins the SEC championship again. I can't see Georgia losing. I think they're going undefeated again.
There's no one's going to challenge them. I think that's going to ultimately be their downfall, to be honest.
Yeah. So there we have it. Now the moment of truth. Let's get into our college football playoff picks. I'll go with mine first. I've got Georgia in as the 1 seed. I've got Michigan, Clemson, and Texas. I was really considering look, there's a scenario where LSU, is a very sexy 11-1 team sitting there. There's also a scenario where Alabama, the only game they lose is to LSU in Tuscaloosa, and they're sitting as an 11-1 team that, is very attractive. So I went back and forth on that. I just think they're going to defer to conference champions. Clemson sweeps the ACC, Michigan runs through the Big Ten, Texas wins the Big 12, and that's what I've got.
I think those are all really good picks. I don't like Michigan. I'm not high on Michigan. And it's purely out of bias.
They don't play anybody though. That's the problem.
Right. And again, they got to go to Happy Valley.
And let's get your picks. You've got Alabama in. You've got Penn State in for the Big Ten.
I do.
Georgia, and you also have Texas. And now because you have Texas, I want to take Texas off mine because that feels weird to both go with the Sark train.
Yeah. Here's the deal, Gordy, and put my face back on. I can't cut bangs. I can't get bangs right now. My hair's too short for it. And I want to be different and I want to stand out. And usually my go-to is, I'm going to get bangs. And I can't get bangs. So I put Penn State, Texas, Bama, and Georgia in the playoff. And I hate every pick that I've made today. Besides the ones for week one. I think that it's just the one that I'm least confident in out of the ones I just showed you is Bama. Because I still think they could run the table in the West. I don't think LSU just goes to that schedule unscathed. Bama could lose to Texas and lose to A&M and still somehow get in potentially to the SEC championship game. I do think that Georgia is it's going to be a repeat of 2021, where it's like they don't play anybody all year, and then you got to go play somebody in Atlanta and you get your brains beat in. I do love what Penn State's been able to build. It's been slowly building, I think, for a while now. Now you have some actual talent at quarterback, the former 5-star. And I honestly, I think Texas is legit. And I don't mean like Texas is back. They're going to challenge. They're going to win 10 games. I think Texas is a legitimate national title contender. They are built to win a national title, and they're built to win one in how to build a team to do it in this day and age of football. They have a lot of talent on that offense, and they're going to be a nightmare for some teams.
I just had a flash of me replaying that clip of you saying that in December when Texas has 5 losses.
Yeah.
we'll do it.
Abilene Christian.
We'll run it back when that happens. He is Chris Marler of the College Football Uncensored podcast. Marler, blast having you back, man. We're going to do it every week, and let listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Gordy. This is my favorite thing to do, obviously, with you every week, and it feels like we're back in the season, so it's great. Check us out at Saturday Football Uncensored. We have a new episode that comes out every Sunday night on a live video, and then every Wednesday night, Thursday morning, previewing the week ahead. So check us out there. I'm on social media at Vern Funquist. I'm fun for about, 2 or 3 days. Then you're probably going to either mute or block me, but that's totally fine. And check me out on Instagram as well under the same name, Vern Funquist.
All right, that's it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow, getting into it, previewing all the Thursday night games. You don't want to miss that right here on Locked On SEC. You guys have a great day. Shout out to everydayers. Talk to you tomorrow.